All right, it's time to talk golf on Prime Sports Network as we are entering week 2 of our partnership here with Jared Smola, who is an expert fantasy football analyst and now an expert golf analyst after going 1 for 1 with his picks last week. Max Homa, we talked about I think one of the things we touched up on last week was the fact that I think, what was he ranked, like in the high 30s or something like that, 40s last week. It was like, nah, he's too good for that. And sure enough, he goes out and he wins, and now he's really where he should be because he is that good. He's not I don't think he's top 20, but I think he's like top 30.
Yeah, I mean, and this is the recipe for me when I tend to hit golf winners. It's finding guys that have been striking the ball well, and that's off the tee and approach. And Homa was top 6. He was top 6 in the field in both of those metrics over the last 3 months. Heading into last week, he did that again. Last week, he actually led the field off the tee. Last week, he was 12th in approach, and then he found a hot putter. He finished 4th for the week in putting. That's the recipe. Continue the ball striking, find a hot putter, and you're going to win.
Interesting that he's ranked 29th, and yet he has 3 wins since last February. I mean, that's something, I mean, and even considering before his first win, he was ranked 91st. I'm kind of surprised that he's not a little bit higher up than that, but that just shows you, because I was going over some of the rankings as I do every week, and we'll talk about that as we go through here. And you see some players that don't have a lot of wins, like 1 win in the last 3 years or 4 years, but they're ranked like really high. It's like, how they rank so high? They only got like 1 win in 4 years. Yeah. I mean, we know why, but
I'm not even exactly sure how that point system works. I mean, it seems to me they're not awarding enough points for winning, or they're awarding too much for top 5 finishes. I know the interesting thing with Homa, he has been horrible in majors throughout his career so far. Like, I'm just looking at it now with the Masters, he's gone miscut, 48th. At the PGA, 64th, miscut. Let's see, U.S. Open. Has he even played in the U.S. Open?
Yes.
Yeah, miscut. Yeah. Which is strange because he, like we saw it last week, he tends to play well at tougher courses.
I don't know, that pressure maybe.
That was one of the tougher. Yeah, maybe. I mean, I don't know. I feel like his game suits majors more than the results would show so far. So we'll see if that changes going forward now.
Yeah, because let's see, he hasn't, even though he won last year, he was still just an average player. With 1 PGA Tour win at that point, I believe, right? He only has 3 now, or 4. 4.
He's won Wells Fargo twice.
There you go. So it's 4 PGA wins and 2 KFT wins. But even then, next time, which is next week, that will be the telling. Is okay. Now you're a big shot. Now you've won 3 PGA events in a year and a half. Let's see what you're made of in a major event. So we'll see. Because last week was just so miserable. The conditions, the scoring was just bad.
Yeah. Well, I don't know about you, but I like those.
I don't mind it once in a while. No.
I like the hard weeks. I don't like the birdie fest.
I don't like
a birdie fest this week.
Minus 26. I don't like
exactly. That. I like when these guys are struggling for pars.
Yeah,
that's fun.
Yeah, it's not bad. It wasn't, of course, a big field anyway. So McIlroy was the top guy, and if he didn't get off to such a slow start, barely making the cut, then he might have had even a better chance to make something of his final round. But it really was difficult for anybody to come from behind last week. It was just so hard over the weekend. So. And it was Max Homa and Bradley going back and forth.
Yeah, exactly. I was going to say, if you listened to our show last week, we had Homa, you had Keegan Bradley, I had Cam Young, who finished second, and you had Rory McIlroy, who was kind of there at the end. So we were all over that leaderboard.
Yes, Cam Young made a nice little late run.
Cam Young led the field, strokes gained, tee to green. He putted horribly, which he's not a bad putter. So if he had an average putting week, he actually would have been your winner last week.
Watch out, he's coming. All right,
he's going to win this year.
Yeah, we just talked about that last week. So he's now on. He's now up the board. We're gonna have to come up with like an actual board of like our top 5 or something, and we'll follow that. I gotta work on that.
I like that.
Okay, so Now this week we have pretty much a new golf course. They've only played there once for this Byron Nelson, the TPC Craig Ranch golf course in Texas. And here's an interesting, now, two different golf courses, but here's an interesting trend that really is not a trend unless Siwoo Kim wins. And that is the fact that South Koreans have won the last two events. KH Lee winning last year. And now here's something interesting, and this helps for us long shots. That's why I think people are going to look at most of our picks this week, and they're going to be like, where are you going with these picks? Well, that's because over the last 8 winners, the average ranking is 103rd for the average winner. Their ranking before winning. There's only been 2 players that have ranked under 100. No, under 96 out of those 8. And only 1 under 76. And that was a ranking of 15th. Only 2 of the last 8 winners have ranked inside the 96. So, but again, 2 different golf courses. Trinity Forest was a couple of years ago. They had COVID, so there was nothing there. And now Craig Ranch for 1 season. So we'll see how this plays out. I think it's also interesting to note that this is, I think, very important because this is how I handicap this week. Maybe it's how you handicap this week. The last 2 Byron Nelsons have played before the PGA Championship. And as we know, it's next week. So, and it's a good field, but are the top players, we're talking the Schefflers, the Thomases, the Dustin Johnsons, the Schauffele's, the Spieths, and so forth, the Koepkas, do they really care about this week? Or are they just going to fine-tune themselves for the PGA Championship?
Yeah, those are 2 points I wanted to make. One was that with the PGA coming up next week, you worry about, I don't know if motivation is the right word, but like focus. Like, are they, how are they here, or are they already at, Southern Hills for next week? Are they just using this to build to a win next week? So that's one point. That's why I have sort of shied away from the favorites on my betting card this week. The other point too, you were talking about all the long shots that have won at this event. And again, it goes back to the fact that this is going to be super low scoring. It's you have to make a ton of birdies. To me, that type of tournament opens it up to more players where it basically just becomes a putting contest. I don't know, John Rahm at whatever event it was, the Amex, I want to say, was, pissed off walking off one of the greens, and he made some comment where, this is just a putting contest. And that's what these kind of turn into. And that to me makes the results more volatile and a bit tougher to predict.
What was the score last year?
KH Lee won at minus 25.
25. All right.
Yeah.
So there you go. One of the other things that I used for handicapping this week is the fact that this is one of, I believe it's 4 events played in Texas. And match play makes it 4 if you want to include that. We have the Houston Open, the Valero Texas Open, the Charles Schwab. Well, those are 3 plus the Byron Nelson would be 4. Match play 5 if you want to include that. And I do use that because, there are some players that, like Mickelson in his heyday, it's like you could be rest assured Mickelson is always going to win one event on the West Coast every year. You have players who just like Texas. We're going to get into that on the show. Yep. Some players like Florida, so that's something to keep in mind as well. And the other thing too is that even though it's only been, I believe, 2 years to Byron Nelson before the PGA, the Byron Nelson has, in years past, I believe I think we've seen the Byron Nelson before, maybe not the Masters. I don't remember what it was, but we'll get into that. I have something I want to hold on for that. But also, 12 of the last 21 winners have been international players. So that opens up the field even more.
Yeah.
And makes it interesting.
Yeah, a couple more course notes I had. It's par 72. It's almost 7,500 yards, so it's actually a long course. Despite it being easy. So I do think driving distance matters this week. Kind of looking at the results from last year, and it's tough because we have just 1 year of data to go on, so it's tough to commit to it too much. But last year, par 5 scoring was huge, so that's something I looked at this week. Guys who have long-term and short-term been good on par 5s. This is another course. We talked about this last week. The par 4s between 450 and 500 yards. There's 5 of those this week. So I looked at that. And the last thing I looked at kind of specific to this week, 35% of approach shots on this course last year came from 200 yards plus.
Wow.
The tour average is 23%. So they were, about 50% more of those long approach shots. So I looked at that this week. Who's been doing well lately on those approaches from 200 plus.
Well, that should, maybe a player like Will Zalatoris could benefit from that. Now, he's not in either of our picks, but maybe somebody like Will Zalatoris, who I think there are going to be and maybe you did the same thing. And even though a lot of players are focusing on next week, look, in my opinion, if you haven't won in a few years, if you've never won, I don't care where your ranking is, you just want you want to win. That's all. You don't care about what major is. Sure, you're gonna love the major, and that's gonna be important. But hey, especially if you get off to a good start like on Thursday, I gotta try to win this thing. So.
Yeah, and Zalatoris was one of my very last crossouts. I looked at him hard all week here. I just don't know if he's going to make enough putts to win here. I like Zalatoris more at the tougher courses. We talked about how he's done so well at the majors, the tougher tracks. I'm not sure I like him in a low scoring event like this, but he could definitely win. It would not shock me at all.
Okay, so let's go down. The favorite is Scottie Scheffler, but I just can't imagine Scheffler, who hasn't played since his Masters win. Can't imagine he cares much, even though it's Texas. He's a Texas boy. That may be interesting, but I just can't imagine that he's going to be focused this week with the PGA Championship next week, even though he's won 4 of the last 6 events. He did play here last year, finished 47th.
Yeah, I just don't really bet golfers in the single digits, and what a Scheffler, like 7-1, 8-1. I'm not interested in betting a golfer. I just think it's too random of a weekly event to bet some of that low odds.
Remember a few years back, those odds used to get lower with players like Tiger Woods, and I used to hate handicapping events with players like that. With Tiger Woods, or when Rory was on top of his game, or Jason Day was hot, and those guys were like 5-1 or 4-1, or I remember Tiger would be like 3-1 or 2-1. It's like you can't even bet the guy. At those odds.
We had Rahm at 3.5 to 1 a couple weeks ago, and he ended up winning. So I'm not saying they're not good bets, just not for me.
No, I get it. The next player is actually on my board, and he's my top pick, Justin Thomas at 9-1. Now here's an interesting thing, because again, we said it last week. All right, he's trying hard, and Janet Stevenson had mentioned he's really focused and he's trying to do his best and all that stuff. He's got 1 win since August of 2020, but he has 16 straight top 35s. So he's hanging around. His game is not there. We've talked about that, whether it's his putting or whatever. But here's an interesting thing that kind of put it over the top for me. One, as I just mentioned before, hey, if he gets off to any sort of start, he would love to win, especially before a major, to get some of those juices flowing again, positive juices. And here's another thing. Back in 2020, the week before the PGA Championship, he won the WGC FedEx St. Jude. The event before the PGA Championship, which is next week, he won a couple of years ago. So to me, that means, yeah, I can win if I need to before a major. So I'm going to go ahead and take Justin Thomas as my top pick at 9-1. Are you surprised? Maybe not so because of name recognition. Well, first of all, Zalatoris, by the way, is 14-1. He has 7 straight top 4. He has 7 top 40s in 7 events this year. That's how solid he's been. We talked about the way that he blew the Farmers Insurance Open. But surprised that DJ and Schauffele. Now, they're both 18-1, and they're the co-4th choices.
Mm-hmm.
To me, maybe, and I know it's probably name recognition, but don't you think Sam Burns should be ahead of those guys? Odds wise,
he's definitely won more than them lately, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And these guys up top too, if you look at different books, the order will change. Sure. Like I know Zalatoris is 14 on DraftKings. I've seen him like 22 or 24 in other spots. That's kind of the number I was looking at him. But yeah, Burns is just, the guy wins. And he tends to win these lower scoring type of events. So he Burns and Zalatoris were the 2 like higher end guys that I was considering betting this week. I didn't quite get to them, but if I was gonna bet someone, sub 20-1, it would be Burns or Zalatoris.
Yeah, Burns second last year here. So I was also thinking heavy about him, but again, I just kind of stood away. It was like, all right, if I took Justin Thomas, I wasn't gonna take another favorite. I just can't do it this week. Okay, yep. So yeah, DJ and Schauffele, man, DJ is 11th now worldwide. The last time he finished outside the top 10 at the end of the year was 2014. That's how bad his game has gotten. Coming off a miscut at the RBC. He hasn't had a top 5, and I don't include match play, since the Saudi win February of last year. So that's and Schauffele is 12th ranked, and he hasn't ranked outside the top 10 at the end of the year since 2017. His second full season on tours, coming off a miscut at the Masters. He only has one top 5 this year. So, yeah, I can't imagine either of these guys, especially when we got a whole bunch of other players with better odds, why either one of us would want to go with those two.
Yeah, they're not on my radar. And Xander's a guy that I bet a lot. He will definitely be someone I'm looking at next week at the PGA. But I'm not betting him here at that number. Then, yeah, Dustin Johnson is like still priced as if he's 2019, 2020 Dustin Johnson. I just don't think he's the same guy, at least right now. Maybe he'll rediscover that form, but right now I don't think he belongs in this tier.
He keeps it up, he's going to be where Brooks Koepka is, 35-1. Jordan Spieth. Now here's one of those players I was talking about. So he's coming off the RBC win. Is only his second win since 2017, and yet he's ranked 9th. Like, I mean, and seriously, when you think Jordan Spieth over the last couple of years, all he's done is he'll have like 2 months where he'll do nothing. Then he'll either finish second or win. It's like that's what he does. It's like it's very hard to predict when Jordan Spieth is going to play well nowadays.
Yep. Yeah, and he's a Texas guy. He's won at the Valero. He's won at Charles Schwab. So he's had success in Texas. This is like bizarro Spieth that we've gotten lately because he is hitting his irons awesome and even driving it pretty well. And his putter has been cold. He lost strokes putting when he won that Heritage. He was just so good in everything else that he was able to win despite that. So, man, if Spieth keeps ball striking like he is, and then he actually finds the putter, because we know, long term he is a good putter. He could be live this week, and he could even be live next week at the PGA.
Yeah, I tell you what, I want to see him play well back-to-back events.
Sure.
And then maybe because next week's field will be even stronger, and it'll probably be 25, 30-1, something like that. So he may not be a bad bargain next week if he plays well this week. Burns also, by the way, 22-1. I mentioned Koepka's at 35-1. He has only one top 5 since last June, not including match play. But one of the other 35-1 shots is your top player, and that is Joaquin Niemann, who was 12th at the RBC his last time out. He won this year at Genesis. And I was actually thinking a little bit about him early on, but he is going to be your number 1 pick. Why are you going with Niemann as your top pick?
Yeah, I like this number at 35-1. I actually think Niemann is pretty close just in terms of like ability and chance to win as guys like Will Zalatoris and Sam Burns, who are, 14 or 22-1. So I think Niemann should be closer to that, maybe 25-1. So I think I'm getting good value on the number. Niemann 5th in the field in strokes gained total over the last 3 months. That includes 3rd tee to green. Putting is always the potential hang up with Niemann. He kind of runs hot and cold with the putter, but bent grass is his best putting surface. That's what we're on this week. He actually loses strokes on POA and Bermuda greens, but he's slightly positive putting on bent grass. So if I can get a positive putting week from him with that ball striking, Niemann also does well on easier courses. I looked into that this week. He's 7th in the field on easy courses. All these numbers, by the way, are from Fantasy National. That's what I use to do my golf research. FantasyNational.com. They, you can kind of search through what they deem easy golf courses, and it's based on what the winning score is. And Niemann is 7th in this field on those easy courses.
Yeah, he's got the talent. I mean, he's 17th now, and you get the feeling he's that good that he could be where, like, say, Cameron Smith is now in about a year or two. So we could be looking at this time next year or the year after where he's in the top 5. That's the kind of player I think he could become. So
yeah, he could go on a Scotty Scheffler type of run where and he got his first win at Genesis a few months ago. So they could kind of start to pile up now for him.
Yeah, the one thing though that we do need to see, and actually that's his second win. The one thing he hadn't won since 2019, and it's interesting. Right. He wins a Greenbrier. He wins there as you mentioned. He's also, his top finishes are places like Century, Tournament of Champions, which is a smaller field and a pretty weak golf course, Rocket Mortgage Classic, Sony Open. So
Yep.
we just talked about Homa. If Neiman does want to put himself into that Cameron Smith territory, he now has to step it up on the bigger stages.
For
Which
sure.
he kind of did at the Masters. I mean, for a little while,
Yep.
he was, kind of going
Well,
there.
yeah, and I mean, Genesis Riviera is
That's a tough course.
tougher golf course.
Yeah.
That was a good field.
Yes.
So that was definitely that was twice as impressive as him winning the Greenbrier.
Absolutely. Okay, Matsuyama is also 35-1, as I mentioned. Koepka. By the way, Matsuyama has only one top 5 this year. I'm surprised. I don't know what Seamus Power is doing up with Joaquin Neiman and Matsuyama. We both talked about him last week, and he deserves to be talked about, but not with these guys. He's ranked 41st. He was 9th here last year, but he only has one top 5 this year. What's he doing at 35-1 with these guys? I mean, come on. Does somebody just because he was 9th here last year? Is that why?
That's the only thing I can think
of.
And that's not nearly good enough reason for him to be that high.
No. Okay. Now at 40-1, there are a couple of players here, including my second choice, Tommy Fleetwood. And Fleetwood, I was going back and forth with Fleetwood and a couple other players that did not make it in. But Fleetwood made it in, and I kind of did it because even though he hasn't won since 2019, but he's starting to, it looks to me he's trending in the right direction, and he has 6 straight top 35s, and he is one of these players that is not going to care about, in my opinion, I don't think he should care about PGA Championship. He's never won a PGA Tour event, so I don't think it's going to matter to Tommy Fleetwood that he's going to be, I'm not going to be concentrating this weekend if I'm in contention. I don't see that happening at all. So I think if Tommy can get in contention, which is the thing he hasn't been doing for the last year or so as well, that's important more than anything to get his momentum going for next week at the PGA Championship. So I figured I'd give Tommy a go at it at 40-1.
I love Tommy Fleetwood. I have lost a lot of money betting Tommy Fleetwood. You mentioned he hasn't won a PGA Tour event yet. I think he'll get one at some point, but I guess I'm gonna miss out when he does get it because I'm kind of done betting Tommy for now.
I know. I did the same thing, especially over in Europe. There were some events where he just let me down when it looked like he was going to win. Okay, Adam Scott, by the way, is also 40-1. He's the 08 champ of this event, and he's also won at Houston and at Colonial. So Scott has some success in Texas, but he's one of those guys who definitely cares more about next week. Okay, so at 45-1, we have 2 players, and both of these players are on our list. Your second choice, Taylor Gooch, and my third choice, Jason Kokrak. Gooch coming off of 14th at the Masters, trending in the right direction, played here last year, made the cut, won the RSM last November, and definitely is playing his best golf of his career.
He is. He's still a volatile player. Like, if you look at his recent results, there's some missed cuts in there too. But that doesn't worry me so much when I'm betting guys to win. I want to see the ability to have the spike week. You mentioned he won at RSM, 7th at Arnold Palmer, 14th at the Masters. So he's had some spike weeks already over the past few months. I like his fit at this course. He's 10th in the field on those easy courses I talked about. Okay. He is in this field over the last 12 months. Gooch is 2nd in par 5 scoring. He is 17th in that proximity from 200 plus yards that I talked about. You're going to have a lot of those long irons. He's 17th best in the field, and he's 30th best on those par 5s or those par 4s between 450 and 500. So he sort of checks a lot of the boxes I was looking for this week. And again, Gooch is a guy, we saw it back in November. He can win these tournaments when he gets himself in the mix down the stretch.
Okay, and then Kokrak is a player who likes to compete in Texas. He won Houston in November. He won Charles Schwab last May. He was also 7th the last time he played the Texas Open in 2019. He's not playing his best. He's on top of his game. He does not have a top 10 this year. But in this event, this is what I'm looking for. I'm looking for a player like this that's got the capability of winning this type of event and that's comfortable in these environments, which apparently Jason Kokrak is. I'm actually a little surprised he doesn't have a top 10 this year. After the way he finished last year, I was thinking, well, does he have another gear? Is there something more to Jason Kokrak's game? I guess there's not. Maybe he's just, a top 40 player. That's all he'll ever be. But he's definitely still at a point in his career better than he's ever been.
Yeah, I'm just looking through Kokrak's numbers here, and he just hasn't been able to put everything together in a single week. Like, he's had good driving weeks, he's had good approach weeks, he's had good putting weeks. They haven't all happened together. That's kind of why, he hasn't had that, top 10 finish yet. But again, he has shown that he can do all this stuff well. He's got to string all that together in 1 week.
Yeah, and again, he has his win, by the way, last year at Charles Schwab happened the week after the PGA Championship. So since last May, he's got 2 wins. Not a lot of players have 2 wins over the past year. Okay, so moving on, 55-1. We got a bunch of players here to talk about, including a couple of picks for both of us. My 4th pick, Adam Hadwin, and your 3rd choice, Aaron Wise. Wise was definitely in the consideration for me, sort of like what we talked about last week with Homa. So I liked the Wise pick. I was thinking about Wise when I saw that you took him. I says, okay, I'm off the board there, but he's trending in the right direction. He's the 2018 winner of this event at Trinity Forest. So that combination of, hey, even though it's not the same golf course, this is kind of familiar for me and I'm kind of feeling good about my game, kind of made sense to me too.
Yeah, well, that worked for me with Homa last week, who had won the Wells Fargo at a different course. So I figured I got to give it a shot with Wise again this week.
I like it.
Hadwin, by the way, was close to making my list too. So I'm glad, we're kind of on the same page with Hadwin and Wise in this 55-1 area. Aaron Wise, excellent ball striker, horrible putter. So he, over the last 3 months, he's 10th in this field, tee to green. He's 8th in off the tee, strokes gained off the tee. He's 24th strokes gained approach, 119th in this field in putting. So that's obviously the problem for Wise. But he's sort of starting to come around a little bit with the flat stick. He's gained strokes putting in 5 of his 9 events this season. And that includes each of his last 2, Heritage and Mexico. And he came 21st at Heritage. He was 6th at Mexico. So I trust the ball striking to be there. If he can just, have a decent week putting, I think he can make enough birdies and be in the mix.
Hadwin, meanwhile, 4 straight top 30s, including 3 of those at top 10s. So that's the reason why I felt, as a matter of fact, I think I've taken him the last couple of times he's played. 105th in the world. By the way, Wise 85th. So Hadwin, I think Hadwin's game is much better than 105. And maybe he's going to be one of these late bloomers. But I get the feeling I think there's a top 30 player in Adam Hadwin.
He was bad last season. I don't know what happened, but he's been a lot better in 2022 here, and especially lately.
Yeah, last year was terrible.
3 straight. Yeah, last year was terrible. I'm not sure what happened there, but 9th at the Players, 7th at Valspar, 4th at Valero, and then 26th at Heritage last time out. His irons have been really good lately. So again, Hadwin was a guy that was on my radar and sort of just missed for me.
Other 55-1 shots. Johnny Vegas has got 4 straight top 30s on the season. McNeely, I was kind of thinking he's maybe one of these guys that could break out and get a win. Jason Day is 55-1 as well, the 2010 champ. But first, Johnny Vegas. He's your 4th pick. And did you just like the fact that he's kind of coming in here on a pretty good roll? Because Johnny Vegas doesn't normally put together 4 straight top 30s.
No, maybe he's found something. I don't know. I believe he was 9th here last year. Yep. Vegas had surgery on his arm like a month ago. I don't have any other details, but he returned last week. That was his first tourney back since the arm surgery. He was 2nd in the field in strokes gained approach last week. He was awful off the tee, which is kind of rare for Vegas. He's actually a good driver. If you look even this season, he's gained off the tee in 6 of his 7 events this season prior to last week. So I don't know what that was. I don't know if it was, just because of the rust in his first tournament back or whatever. But again, if he can keep up those hot irons, rediscover the off the tee game. Again, I think he's a good fit here. He has plenty of distance off the tee. He is 4th in par 5 scoring in this field over the last 12 months. So I think he's a good fit for this, longer, easier golf course.
Yeah, the 2-time Canadian Open winner.
Yeah, right.
By the way, they're bringing that tournament back this year, right? I think so.
Yeah, it's not too far from me. I'm in Rochester, New York, so it's kind of right across Lake Ontario. I think it's like just outside Toronto this season.
And this is probably going to be the first year that they're going to be playing with some really, the Canadian field has not been good for years, but this might be the best Canadian field I think I've ever seen. there's going to be some good Canadians that are going to play in that event.
Hadwin, Connors, get my boy Adam Svensson.
Yeah. So
they got some good players.
Yeah. Okay. By the way, Day, it was funny. And, we might have to start, once we start getting into a groove in a few months, we're definitely going to do maybe some live interaction on the weekends, even if it's just for a few minutes, like, hey, who do you like, live betting, things like that. Because I was looking at Jason Day on Saturday, and he was 2-1 on Saturday. And I'm like, there is no way Jason Day is going to continue playing like this all weekend. You just can't have the type of, like, he has been so off his game for so long.
Yeah.
Eventually, you're going to have a really bad round. And he just was terrible on Saturday. He went, what did he lose? Like, what was he, 78, I think, on Saturday?
Yeah, I think he was even 79.
79.
I mean, he was out. He was out of it very quickly.
Yeah.
And that's the case where I wish I could have bet, Jason Day not to win at, minus 300. I would have pounded that.
That's okay. That'll work. That should have worked. 65-1. Some interesting players here. Cameron Champ, I was giving some consideration because he's trending in the right direction with back-to-back top 10s. And he might be the type of player that could play well with his power game this week.
Definitely.
Davis Riley, second, he has 2 top 5s in his last 4. So second at Valspar to Sam Burns in the playoff. Siwoo Kim, can we make it 3 Koreans in a row? So if you're looking for a Korean, here you go. Siwoo Kim at 50. I'm going to put a buck on Siwoo Kim. I just don't care. Those trying to trends, they freak me out. And I definitely always want to have something on him, just in case. Matt Kuchar starting to play a little bit better. But my pick here out of this group is Mito Pereira. And I'm not sure if I mentioned this last week, but he's like, if I had and again, we'll create one of these as well, like a futures of players. He's like one of my top futures guys. I have a lot of hope that he's going to be a really good player down the road. He's got 5 top 30s in his last 6. So I think maybe this is the perfect event for him to be in contention.
Yeah, I like Mito a lot. I bet him. I think it was through the Florida swing. I was betting Mito a lot. I kind of like him on those tougher tracks. He's definitely in play. That's a good number you're getting on Mito Pereira.
Yeah, he's ranked 101st. So he's right there where we want him. Okay, 75-1. You got Mitchell and Watson. And Keith Mitchell crashed and burned last week. Didn't even make the cut. And if you take a look at Mitchell, and this is another thing that I always look at, because sometimes players actually have a history of winning events after miscuts. And some players I've noticed have maybe 8 pro wins and have never won an event after a miscut. So you always have to do some of that research as well. But anyway, Mitchell has only 1 win. That was the Honda, and he won after back-to-back miscuts coming into that event. So I wouldn't worry about that. It's just that I picked him last week and he crashed and burned, so I'm passing on him. But at 80-1, we have Brian Harmon. We have Mackenzie Hughes. We have Lanto Griffin, one of your picks we're going to get into. So Harmon was this close. He was one of my last guys out. He's trending in the right direction. And I just kind of feel something with Brian Harmon, but I went with Hadwin instead. You went with Lanto Griffin. Griffin, just like Wise, was another player that I was thinking of putting into my list. As soon as I show your picks, I put him out. So I like your pick with Griffin. He's trending in the right direction, and his first and only PGA Tour win happened in the Houston Open in 2019.
I like that he won the Houston. I like his ball striking these last 2 events now. So the last 2 events for Lanto, 15th at the Mexico Open and 6th at Wells Fargo. At Mexico, he was 6th in the field off the tee and 24th on approach. Last week at Wells Fargo, 8th off the tee and 6th in approach. So he is hot off the tee and with his irons. Again, you get one of those, Max Homa type top 5 putting weeks, and that could get Lanto into the winner's circle.
And right now, Lanto, as far as your picks, he's your 5th choice. And those are your top 5. And again, you're getting a solid 80-1 with Griffin. So, and my top 5 concluded with Pereira at 65-1. So we're going to get into our alternates here in just a little bit. Or actually, we're going to, before we do, Hughes, 9th last week. There's something about him, and maybe it's because he plays better in majors. There's something about him where it's like, why isn't he better? We just talked about Canadians. Why isn't he more consistent? Because he just plays better in the major events. You would think, well, how come it doesn't translate in the other events?
Yeah.
So,
well, he tends to lean on his putter, and I think those types of players can be more volatile when you're banking on making a whole bunch of putts. So that'd kind of be my answer as to why he maybe hasn't won as much as you think he might.
Yeah, he needs to. He's just not very consistent at all. It's just hard to get behind him. You just think, all right, and I've taken him a few times, but it's like you just know it's just a guess because he's just not consistent.
Yep.
Okay, 100 to 1, and we both have a player at 100 to 1 as our alternates. It's and again, most of our alternates doesn't matter if it's first or second because we have the same amount. $10 each in both alternates, but it does matter if you look at the fact that, again, if one of the top 5 of our picks winds up withdrawing, then you move up the ladder. So the guy who's first goes into the 5th category. So at that 5th category, you get 20 points or $20. So it does matter for that reason. And your second alternate and my first alternate work here under the 100 to 1 number, and that is you are going with Kiriyama, who I was definitely considering as well as in this spot, ranked 130th in the world. He's got 4 top 30s in his last 6, 2 top 5s, a runner-up in Mexico, 15th last week. So he is starting to play a lot better right now. And I remember really paying attention to him more so on the European tour, where I started to notice him. He's got what does he have? He has, I believe, 1 win, 2 if you want to consider one of those events over in Europe. But he's got 2 wins over in Europe, and we'll find out whether or not this is the beginning of him becoming more of a consistent player on the PGA Tour.
Exactly, young guy. So I think there's still some untapped upside with Kiriyama, and maybe he was right in the mix at the Mexico Open a couple weeks ago, finished second. Followed it up with a nice 15th at Wells Fargo. And Kiriyama's been crushing it with his irons. He led the field in strokes gain approach last week. He's a bomber. He can get wild off the tee, but I think that makes him a good fit here because there's not a whole lot of trouble off the tee here. You kind of got to hit it long. Accuracy, not as important. He's also a good par 5 scorer. He's pretty good from that 200 plus range with his irons. So I think this is the type of course. And I honestly think Mexico Open is a pretty good comp course for what we're going to see this week. Longer, easier golf course. So I think it's a good fit for Kiriyama's game.
All right, next up is Pat Cazire, and again, this is my alternate pick. And I like the fact that if you take a look at Cazire and his play over in Texas, in 2021, he was 3rd at Charles Schwab. He was 3rd on this golf course last year as well. He was 9th at the Texas Open. So you get the 3 Texas events, all top 10s, 2 top 5s. Back to 2020, he was 11th at the Houston Open. So we know Pat Cazire likes playing in Texas. And again, I like the fact that he was 3rd last year. So he's like one of those just feeling, maybe this is one of those events that would fit him the most. He hasn't won since 2018. And this is the only kind of event that I would take a Pat Cazire. But I figured that if I'm going to take him, Texas, especially here with the 3rd last year, would be the place I would do it.
I bet Cazire at Valero a few weeks ago for all those reasons you just mentioned because he's been so good in Texas. And then he missed the cut at Valero, but so that's why I'm off him because I got burned. But I hope he delivers for you.
Yeah, so do I. Right? Okay, so he's ranked 125 in the world. By the way, KH Lee's 100 to 1 to defending champ. Moving on, we have Ian Poulter's at 110 to 1. He has 1 win since 2012. That was the Houston Open in 2018, which happened the week before the Masters, by the way. So this week, also in Texas, the week before a major. But Ian Poulter, about 5 years ago, I would have not guaranteed, but I felt very strongly that Ian Poulter was going to win a major. Probably a British Open, an Open Championship, but I just felt that he had that in him. Sort of like you see a lot of these older guys that win a major. I just thought maybe he still does, but I don't know. He's just getting older. That's what it is.
He just lives for his Ryder Cups, man. Get him in that match play. That's where he thrives.
All right, 130 to 1. We got play. Here's another Korean. Maybe if you don't want Siwoo Kim, you can go with Ju Young Kim. another Korean who's actually very good on the Asian tour. He's got 6 wins since 2019 between Asian and Korean tours. He's 71st in the world. And I've never really heard. I mean, he has only played a limited amount of events in the PGA Tour. Naismith, you took him last week. Rye, you almost took last week, also at 130 to 1. Let's see, 150 to 1. We have one of your alternates. Seth Theegala is another one, just like Kiriyama. I was thinking about Theegala in the same area because he's made 5 straight cuts. And keep this in mind. He ended 2021 ranked 381st in the world. He's now up to 120th. And it's May. That shows you how much better his game has gotten. He ranks 123rd, so he's right in that kind of category. So he's definitely one of those players that you think kind of like fits this week.
Exactly. Similar mold to Kurt Kiriyama, young power player, Theegala crushes it off the tee, can be erratic, but I don't think that's so important here. We've seen the upside this season. Remember, he came 3rd at the Phoenix Open when Scottie Scheffler won. Theegala finished 7th at Valspar. He was 24th last time out at the Mexico Open again, which I think is a pretty good comp course for this week. Again, Theegala, plenty of distance. He's 14th in this field in driving distance, and he's 22nd in the field on those easy courses. So again, he's the type of guy I'm gonna be playing probably all year on these, longer, easier tracks.
Okay. And by the way, Stallings is also at 150 to 1. He was 3rd here last year. He's like these guys that you only want to take when he's kind of maybe coming off a top 10 or something because he gets these mini runs. I've been surprised that he's never been better than, but he's just one of these regular tour guys that just always gets his card. Okay, 200 to 1. You got, Denny Willett at 200 to 1. That's a big number for a player of his talent, but he's still not consistent enough. I guess that's why he's down there. But I do have a 200 to 1 shot as one of my alternates, and that's Steven Jaeger from Germany. You got a player that has 6 career KFT wins, so he knows how to win. He's ranked 164th. He's trending in the right direction. His best finish on the PGA Tour was last week when he finished 6th. So I figure, hey, if I'm ever going to take Jaeger, maybe this is the week I'll throw him into this category and see if I can ride, one of these players. Like I said, I think the thing with him is that at least he knows how to win. He just hasn't done it on the PGA Tour yet.
I like this one. I had not looked into Jaeger this week. I just pulled them up here. So if you look at, again, you talked about how he's done well the last 2 weeks, 15th in Mexico and 6th at Wells Fargo. He's done a lot of that damage with his irons, which you like to see. And then putting wise, he is a below average putter on POA and Bermuda, but he's an above average putter on Bentgrass, which is where we are this week. So that's a nice shot to take there at a 200 to 1 Stefan Jaeger.
Deep long shot. All right. By the way, Charles Schwartzel finished 3rd here last year. He was in contention at the Masters last month. But that was a one trick kind of deal. He's 250 to 1. I always find it funny whenever these players, like they're not playing well and they get into these events and then they're interviewed, like say on a Saturday, and I guess I don't blame them for talking themselves up or so, my game is starting to, it's like, come on, man. It's just a 1 week thing, dude. That's it. I mean, and I can't imagine how I'm surprised though, that a player like his ability, we just mentioned Danny Willett. These guys have just disappeared.
Yeah, we talked about it last week. It's hard to win. Golf is so loaded right now, and I was just gonna say, that's just kind of the Masters. That's Augusta. I feel like every year you get one of these older guys. They just know the course.
Yes.
They just know the course so well. Yes. Even if they're not playing great, they just know where not to miss. That's they can read the greens better than the younger kids, and they pop up on the leaderboard.
Yep, that's definitely a part of your strategy at the Masters, no question about it. So next week is the big one of the big ones, the PGA Championship. So can't wait to talk about that. That's in Tulsa.
Tulsa, yep.
Okay, so I'm not sure. Do we know what kind of golf course we're dealing with yet? What were you saying?
I said I already got a few bets in for the PGA too. I've seen some numbers I liked. One of them's on Zalatoris actually. I'm on him for the PGA at 36 to 1.
So you're going for the first time pro win at a major.
I think he can do it. I think he's been in the mix in majors where I think he's gotten a taste. And I definitely believe in his game.
So all right. And so you must know a little bit about the course already?
I've read some stuff. I've
Not
watched some
as
videos, but I haven't really started to dig in
okay.
yet. As far, and there have been PGA events. Right? I think Tiger won here
Oh, they
some
have
time
played
back.
at
So
this golf
there's been
course before?
they have played at Southern Hills before, so we should have some data to work with.
Okay, that's cool. So that's good because we have just been since the Masters, man. It has just been a downer in golf the last couple of months. There's been a lot of and I know we didn't talk about it, but I can't. I don't know. Maybe you feel differently, but I can't stand the Zurich Classic event.
Oh, it's the worst.
I hate it. I just,
Yep.
what are you doing? And I was talking about this with Jan when we were talking about the match play in Texas, and I came up and I said, why don't they do what Europe does? Because Europe has their own match play where they'll have but they only have like 16 players or 32 players. Well, if you want to
Mhm.
guarantee that you're going to get some really good matches, why don't you use an event like the one in New Orleans and turn it into like a top 16 or top 32 match play? I'd rather see something like that. Wouldn't that be
Yeah.
awesome to see like the best players of the world? Not because the match play in Texas is always you never get what you want. It's always going to be somebody that is going to kill the bracket, and it's just you just
Right.
never get what you want. But if you put
Yeah.
together a top 16 or a top 32, you almost ensure that every matchup is going to be a good one. So I'd rather see New Orleans do something like that than this crap that they have. That it's what's unwatchable for me.
There you go. Have Jan talk to her people. She's got to have some connections,
Yeah,
right?
I don't know about that, but I'd rather even see
Yeah.
like match play. I'd be more interested to see man and a woman LPGA
Right.
PGA. I'd rather
Yep.
watch that than what they
Or
put together.
even if they'd make all 4 rounds of the Zurich the alternate shot, is that at least that format? It's can be exciting. The best ball where these teams are shooting, minus 14. That's no fun.
And not surprising, of course, who won this past last month because of I don't know if there was even a player.
Yeah.
I turned it on I don't even remember when I turned it on, and I was looking. I was like, I don't even know who that was. Some of these guys that are playing in this event, I've never heard of in
Yeah.
my life.
Yeah.
So
No good.
anyway, that's for next year when they. But the week before we play there, we can rip that tournament apart. All right, Jared. So how's everything going over at Draft Sharks?
It's good. I'm wrapping up a full projections update post NFL draft, so we'll have our rankings good to go. There's fantasy football drafts firing off now. You can hop in a draft if you want to. So we're ready if you're ready.
Sounds good. Can't wait to start talking football too. So looking forward to that. All right, Jared, appreciate it. Next week it's the PGA Championship. So can't wait to talk about a major, man. Let's see if we can go 2 for 2.
That'd be sweet.
All right, man.
All right.
We'll talk again next week. And coming up on our schedule here on the channel, by the way, tomorrow it's just all football. So that's good. So we'll talk Carolina Panthers and Houston Texans football. We'll talk some Texas football tomorrow on the channel. Don't forget to like, subscribe, comment if you like as well. Let us know who you like. If you have any long shots, and write them down, and we'll hold you to it. So for Jared Smola, I'm Greg DePalma. We'll see you next week.